So this is my second take doing this, even though it's Christmas Eve. I know it's not exactly ideal with all of this, but given how long that the previous video was, I thought breaking this one up and just do its own separate part would be better, and doing that for all the other SSX games in general. So, yeah, just doing some more unscripted thoughts about SSX 3. And where do I even begin with this one? Let's see. Well, this is another one that I remember playing close to when it came out. So I pretty much played most of the SSX games close to when they actually came out, except the first and the last one. But yeah, 3 itself actually that started development not long after the original. Um, after not after the original, after Tricky was released. And it was kind of interesting because EA was kind of notorious for the yearly developmental cycles of games like Madden and the like. However, this one they actually gave it 2 years, mainly because between the development of the original game and Tricky, they wanted both games to allow the player to explore a mountain, but likely due to time constraints or impossible other constraints, well, this was never implemented. So eventually, with having more time for development, this is why they did it this way for SSX 3. And they wanted it to really be more pick up and play, which is kind of odd because the original games I found very pick up and play. But yeah, I guess they really wanted to make it more of that sort of nature as well. But yeah, tough to master. And producer of the game, Larry Lapierre, stated the developers wanted to give the people the first ever full mountain experience and let players choose what they wanted to do on the mountain. This was seen in not just races and freestyle events, but also there's a lot more open-ended nature to the game. There's like collectible snowflakes for money, there's challenges that you can do to earn money, and yeah. So they really wanted to make it like also keep some structure from the original and the second game, but they really just expanded it in a way that was never seen before. And the game was initially confirmed via a trailer in NBA Street Volume 2 with its working title of SSX 3, which was, well, the final. And eventually it was playable at July 2003's Camp EA event, and earlier in the year at May of E3 2003, of which the trailer that was there as well isn't unlockable in the game, but we'll get to that later on. A lot of this open-ended nature was actually inspired by Battlefield 1942 and fellow EA Sports big title NBA Street Volume 2, which actually came out the same year as SSX 3. And the developers basically thought that both games allowed you to choose the way you wanted to play, and so they wanted to do that in there, have that in there, in addition to their own personal experiences with snowboarding at a Island Lake Lodge in Fernie, British Columbia, Canada, outside Mount Fernie Provincial Park. And there was a lot of different people from various backgrounds to work on the game as well, including Academy Award nominated visual effects designer Henry Labunta. He's done a lot of big work on a lot of films, but he was nominated specifically for his for best visual effects in Twister, which is a film I actually watched quite a bit as a kid. So yeah, he also did visual effects for Minority Report, Star Trek Generations, AI, Artificial Intelligence, and yeah, he was even the supervising sequence lead for the Red Sea sequence in The Prince of Egypt. So yeah, in addition to, he was one of actually 3 art directors. But either way, they definitely all blended the best of each of them to create a very unique style for it. This game, it really had a more, I guess, focused mountain-like presentation, like the MCOM navigation as well, the UI as well, and the parts resembling that somewhat. Like you're navigating that thing as you see the other riders use it in parts and some animations. And anything else in this regard? Yeah, in general, the presentation, since it was a little further into the new millennium, they decided probably to just kind of, since that didn't quite have the shine that it did in the previous two games, they just decided to do something a little more straightforward, I guess. But to be fair, I like the presentation in this game, so it worked out. Not to mention, there was a bunch of different types of snow, ranging in consistency, depending on the various peaks and environments you visit on said peaks. And there was a lot of shading techniques and more realistic lighting effects than the previous game. So it really just made everything look better, and just models looked better, shadows looked better, darker areas, lighter areas looked better. Just, yeah, like I said in the review, everything was so much better as well. And there was even more reflections in the in-game snow. Not to mention, this is actually one of the first games to be a THX certified, like in general. And it was the first game in the SSX series to as well, as it was one of 5 games to launch with the THX certification deal. That also, these other ones were Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, Medal of Honor: Rising Sun, Need for Speed Underground, and James Bond 007: Everything or Nothing. It was basically, yeah. And so, especially if you had like a quality home theater set up back in the day, you could have probably run it decently and actually got a very intense audio experience that the average consumer probably would not. I don't know how this would translate to soundbars, as I do know some other games do have specialty options, like for different audio, like options from this era. Like Slutstorm actually on the PlayStation 2 supports DTS audio, and some other games do. But I don't know if just hooking up the PS2 through the Retro Tink and then plugging that into my soundbar would still allow it. And Dolby as well, like Pro Logic 2, you could run in a lot of GameCube games like F-Zero GX. It's always something I wanted to try, but just never had a chance to. Maybe one day I will, but we'll see. But yeah, so everything basically SSX3 had a lot going for it to basically expand on the foundations set by the previous two games, but really just add some new stuff. And lo and behold, actually, a lot of that actually paid off here, because when it came out, it was critically acclaimed. And yeah, just how they did everything. The open world, the trick system, which really kind of didn't change that much from the previous two games, but the boost meter, the max boost meter, was changed from tricky, well, to super uber. You had Uber 1 level tricks, which were pretty basic, and then you had your Uber 2 tricks, basically, which were a little more complicated. And then if you completed everything for a brief period of time, not for the rest of the race, you'd get Super Uber, which was the best boost, and no matter how many times you screwed up tricks, you would not lose it, except for that after the short amount of time you've completed. But yeah, so that was already a big change there. Well, big-ish, I don't know, not really. It doesn't too much impact everything, because the game still very much feels the same, but the mountain itself, like, they really just wanted to expand the single-player mode, and it felt like less of a grind, like, than Tricky, because the only other unlockables in Tricky were the boards and the trick books, or like for the costumes, which the trick books you could easily do as well, like without having to go through career mode. But like the boards, you'd have to go through career mode with every character, and that can be kind of repetitive. So here for like outfits and other accessories, they pretty much opened the customization book, which I think was a really smart thing because it allowed you to pick and choose what you wanted for your character, and you could just do whatever you wanted as long as it was in the game. Like, and that was very cool still. And considering this came out before San Andreas, which had proper character like clothing customization stuff as well, yeah, kind of interesting in that regard. But yeah, beyond that as well, there was just a lot more to do on the mountain. There was a lot more collectibles, a lot more other stuff to do. Like I said, the challenges as well throughout like the various areas of the mountain and the peaks. Adding some other new event types as well, like mainly Big Air, which basically you'd have to get the most amount of points with very few jumps, but you'd have like big air, so you just go crazy. Slope style was like even, or super pipe I mean, was like the crazy, like pipe stuff. It was like insane half pipe stuff, like only a bit more tighter than like the pipe dream course in Tricky. And then slopestyle was the same as the freestyle trick mode in Tricky, but you'd have separate dedicated courses that were designed with tricks in mind. Although you'd have to find the best lines to do so, because the AI, when it gets up there, like, it doesn't play around. So you really got to be prepared. And fortunately, with those money, you could also upgrade your stats as well. And you could even unlock other things like music and extras. That was another big thing as well. There was a lot more types of unlockables compared to Tricky. Because really, all it was the characters, which, in terms of unlockable characters here, all there really was is, like, cheat characters, mainly. Like, which basically consisted of past SSX characters, like, from the original game, like Hero and Jurgen, who were not in Tricky, but they were in the original, and never appeared in any other game aside, like, from some of these other ones, as at least as official characters. I'm pretty sure these cheat appearances are non-canon. The same thing with many of the SSX Tricky characters who didn't make the cut. Brody, Eddie, Luther, Marisol, Sia, a special version of Luther known as Stevel Luther. And shockingly enough, there was actually a character who was replaced that I didn't talk about in the previous video because I kind of slipped my mind, but Marty. Now, for those of you who may or may not remember, this will only apply to people in PAL territories watching this, but Marty was basically only in the PAL version of SSX Tricky and replaced Mac. I don't know why they did this, if maybe Mac was one of the more least popular characters in, like, European territories when SSX came out. Beyond that, though, I don't know, it's like, it was weird. And I believe the manual, though, actually did have some mistakes as well. Like, let me see if I can find it here. Well, I don't know. Well, I think actually Marty may have replaced Mac in, like, the manual here, but yeah. Yeah, here it was. Marty was credited in the manuals in the US version of Tricky, but he was not actually playable in the US version. And they never recorded, like, other audios for his voiceover work either, so yeah, or to accommodate this change. It seemed like it was a sudden focus test at 1, and given how much delay there was between Tricky and 3, or no, Tricky is PAL release, I mean, yeah, unscripted, but yeah, it was a pretty crazy ordeal. And there was some differences, really, is that Marty's own take of, like, his SSX Tricky outfits are more hoodie-based with an undershirt trim, but Mac has the more traditional boarding jacket of being the highly neck-covered in SSX Tricky. Also, another random fun fact, Tobias Pippig, who was Marty's voice actor in Tricky, he was actually the German voice for Naruto. So, yeah, just a random interesting little piece of trivia there. But, yeah, he was there as a cheat character, but he was essentially a new one for many of us US players. And, yeah, because Matt came back in 3 proper, at least, so, yeah. But, yeah, a whole bunch of others as well. You can even unlock Stretch from NBA Street, not NBA Jam, like I mistakenly said in the review. I probably had a little text box, but yeah. And just other bizarre characters as well, like, yeah, there was a lot of cool unlockables in the game as well, like, in general. And honestly, you're probably going to spend a decent amount of time in it. And that's one thing I think that the game really just, yeah, it's definitely something that made a big difference here with all of that. beyond that, like I said, it just made all the usual improvements, and it just, in general, it was just a very rock-solid game, like I said, and probably did what every good sequel to it, but it was a third game, which is kind of awkward, because normally it's the second game that's seen as better than the first, which, to be fair, that was the case, but the third game was somehow better than the second, in my opinion. Yeah, honestly, there was just a lot to enjoy. There was a lot of multiplayer, and in the case of the PlayStation 2 version, there was an online mode, but it has been discontinued, at least when EA started shutting their stuff down. I don't know if, let's see, PS2 games still playable online, because some games have been brought back online, but EA stuff, I don't know. Okay, yeah, ps2online.com. Or rather, I can just click this list. Nope, that's the wrong one. Click that list, and yes, it is. And sadly, no. Even though some EA stuff here has been brought back, I suppose, unfortunately, it seems as if SSX 3 is not one of those games. At least not that I can find. Hold on. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting it confused. It just sucks because the PS2 version was the only one that was online, as opposed to other versions as well. Yeah, I'm just still looking at a bunch of this other stuff. It seems like there was actually a lot of work with Burnout 3 to get it online on the PlayStation 2 again. Unfortunately, or not Tricky, 3, yeah, I don't know. And the game was never playable online on the other platforms, because EA had their crap with Microsoft. Yeah, it's a long ordeal. I don't really want to get into it here, but the gist of it is basically they still wanted to have things their way, and so they never were on Xbox Live until 2004. Yeah. But beyond that, there was just a lot more variety in the environments in SSX 3, like actual weather conditions that could screw around with you if you're not careful and you don't anticipate them. And yeah, more crazier tricks as well in general. And I don't know what else I can really quite go on about it, other than this is, I think, the one me and my cousins always had the most fondest memory of, because, well, I got it a little bit like when it was a greatest hits, because again, greatest hits games were always cheaper, just compared to their normal released counterparts, unless they were budget titles. But yeah, I don't think that was the case here. But still, even at full price, like, I thought it would be worth the money. Like, definitely if you considered, like, going for it back in the day. And yeah. But generally, I think 3 just set the bar in a way that, well, quite frankly, even the previous game, like, somehow it suppressed that. Like I said in my review, I think I just said it best when I compared it to the tag team of the Bar, aka Sheamus and Cesaro. Like I said, they didn't just set the bar. Those two games were the bar, quite frankly. Oh wait, no, that was the Burnout 3 and, well, Revenge review, right? I remember. Still, it's an apt comparison here as well, I think, personally speaking. It really is, and yeah. Like, just playing the game in general, being wowed by it, yeah, being frustrated because my customizations were changed, even though it was my version, which I'm pretty sure is one of the reasons my other cousin, ended up getting the game, like, for his bat PS3, because it was a PS2 play compatible one that could play, it was a PS3 that could play PS2 games as well. One of the early launch models that could do that. And so, yeah, that's why he probably bought it, but that was a Black Label disc. Eventually I got one. And later on enough, I remember getting an Xbox copy of it as well. as like a gift with a bunch of other Xbox games. Not that I minded a second copy of it, because to be fair, I love the game that damn much to the point where I would have every copy, or at least every main console copy, but the only version I don't have is like the GameCube version, and that's like a $25 version, whereas the PlayStation 2 version and Xbox versions are only around like $10, so it's still relatively affordable. Plus, the Xbox version is compatible with the Xbox One and on, and it'll look even better. Tricky though, that one's a little bit more expensive. That's like a $25 game on PS2, $15 on the Xbox, and GameCube version will run you about, Jesus, 30. Oh man. But yeah, I do have still fond memories of getting this and playing this with my cousins. And in general, this game would undoubtedly be in my top 10, like, of all time. I'm not even joking here. Like, this would be in my top 10. Hell, maybe even my top 5. I just love so much about it. And also, one thing before I go is that the soundtrack, especially in this game, was just, like, amazing. Because, like, this previous soundtrack for Tricky was fine, but SSX3 just took that EA Tracks initiative, or kind of, sort of, whatever. I don't remember if it used, not Tracks. It was Radio Big in particular here. I guess the EA Tracks initiative still counted, but they decided to disguise it as a radio in-game, which, to be fair, probably added to the presentation, as you had this, listening to this voice as well, DJ Atomica, go on about whatever here, and giving you the lowdown on what to expect. It just kind of added some immersion, and I guess a cool factor as well, in addition to the presentation. You could almost make it a sports-like one as well, but with like a unique flair, less overly produced, I guess, and more you are the rider. And with the music especially here, I mean, shit, look at this track list. I mean, friggin' Andy Hunter, the Chemical Brothers, Nerd, friggin', see, the Executioners, Swollen Members, Fisher Spooner, at least the remixed version of Emerge from Junkie XL, Fatboy Slim, and Basement Jaxx. And then, not to mention all the other rock-like stuff, like Jane's Addiction, let's see, what else? Yellow Card, let's see, the Caesars, I'm a Robot, let's see, Queens of the Stone Age, like, let's see, Dilated People's Who's Who, which is from Underground, which you know I would recognize. Autopilot Off, which their version of Clockwork is better, like, in the game than it is on the actual one. MXPX, Finger 11, which their song that was featured here, Good Times, was also featured in 1080 Avalanche. And there was a few other oddities in here, like the Black Eyed Peas Before They Went to Hell. What else? Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction. There is all some of them. The point is, I could just go on about this soundtrack. And what's also cool, by the way, is that you could also set up your own custom playlist as well, which was a very appreciated function. So if you wanted to just turn off certain songs, you could have done that, and yeah. So overall, on the whole, SSX3 really just expanded everything that made the first two games good, but just added so much more openness to it, like with what you wanted to do in terms of challenges. So you still had to do a certain amount regardless to get to all the peaks, and to 100% everything is not easy, but it's still a very damn good game that earned its place as to be highly rated, like, in general. Like, I mean, when this came out, it got, I'm pretty sure, damn near, like, critical acclaim, or even universal acclaim, like, in general. Like, the PlayStation 2 version is especially rated at, like, a 93 on Metacritic. And if we take a look here, before, I'll leave you with this. Let's see, Metacritic, PS2. I'll leave you with this, because at a 93, that still puts it in the top 20 games. That means it also tied with a whole bunch of other stuff as well. One above Tricky and tying with World Soccer Winning 11 International, but also tied with Virtua Fighter 4 Evo, NFL 2K3, Pro Evo Soccer 2 or Winning 11 6, Okami, the original SSX, God of War 2, and Burnout 3, and it earned its status as a must-play title. So if you're done listening to me ramble on, which I am here too, so I'm gonna wrap this up, just go play this game in any way you if you have it. If you only gotta play one, probably this one. Or play them all, at least Tricky, 3, On Tour, and the 2012 one. Maybe the first one if you really want to at least have some good memories with that before it gets spoiled, but for certain you can skip Blur. And I don't have much else to add, so Merry Christmas, Happy Festivus, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Winter Solstice, Heartswarming Eve to the best filmship of a cell bar ever. And that's it. I'm out. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff. And check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.